Let me start with our first guest, Tim Crossland. Tim is a former government lawyer with a master in international human rights law, arrested at Parliament Square for allegedly showing support for the proscribed organization. Am I allowed to mention the organization? Yeah?
Oh yes, please.
Yeah, Palestine Action. Yeah. One of the founders of Defend Our Juries. My initial question to Tim: many people in our community want to stand up for Palestine, but fear being criminalized under the UK laws. What advice do you have for engaging in activism in both safe and effective way? Tim, thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much, Kamal and Naz, the Taha Foundation, for asking me to be here. And thank you so much, all of you, being here at this time. Thank you for that question. And I did wonder whether I'm the right person to answer this question. Because imagine you were at a talk about health and safety in the workplace, and the person talking to you was on crutches, and maybe had a leg in plaster, and maybe one of their arms was in plaster, and they had a bandage around their head. Maybe you'd be wondering, is this the right person to be talking to me about health and safety in the workplace? And right now I face 8 charges under the Terrorism Act. If you added up all the maximum sentences for those charges, if I was convicted, that would be 112 years imprisonment. And this is on the allegation of organising peaceful protests in Parliament Square. I'm not allowed to say much more about it, but it did make me wonder, am I the right person to be talking about what one can safely do? But this isn't a talk about health and safety in the workplace. The context for this talk is genocide. And while there are reasons, or maybe some seeds, to hope that something is going to change on a temporary basis, there are many, many reasons to feel we have been here before. And the colonial, imperial mindset of genocide has very obviously not gone. The context for this talk is an arson attack on a mosque in Sussex last Saturday. Context for this talk is Unite the Kingdom marches and demagogues trading in the politics of fear and division. The prospect of a reform government in 2029, if not before. And that's the context I'm asked to talk to you about what we can safely do. And that's where I begin by saying, if we're honest with ourselves, with each other, our families, our communities, let's begin by saying there is no safe course of action. And the thing that often to us feels most safe, which is to mind our own business, to sit quietly in the corner, get on with our jobs, keep our head down, staying out of politics. That is the least safe option of all. And it's not safe in 2 ways. It's not safe politically, because the forces of division are powerful, as they have been for generations, for centuries. And they depend on good people being scared into silence and inaction. And we know that if they face no concerted opposition, those forces will prevail. And that is not safe for any of us. It's how fascism takes hold. In times of crisis, it harnesses our fear, turns people against each other, it turns communities against each other, and then none of us are safe. But there's another very different level at which doing nothing, being a bystander to violence, is not safe. And there's different language people use for this, and I hope I don't get the wrong language. It's not safe for our own souls. However, one interprets that. People have different ways of thinking about it, whether it's our relationship with God, whether it's our relationship with ourselves, when we look ourselves in the mirror, our relationship with our conscience, whatever it is. If we're witnessing genocide of our brothers and sisters, if we're seeing the rise of fascism and authoritarianism wherever we look, and we do nothing, we mind our own business, that is not safe for our souls. So for me, that's the starting point of any address to you. The one thing, the least safe option for all, at whatever level, is to do nothing. And I'm sorry, I wish I had a good answer about what to do. That's not so easy. It's not so easy when everything is so uncertain, the violence is so extreme, it can make us feel powerless. And we should be really careful. I should be careful about suggesting the things that I might have felt able to do are right for somebody else, because I don't know their situation. And the risks that one person can take may not be the risks somebody else can take, and the vulnerabilities that one person faces are very different from someone else's. And there's one bit of advice that I received at one point during the climate activism, which I want to repeat because I felt these were wise words from a professor called James Hansen. He actually wrote a letter to me to share with others. And he said, "It's not for me to determine what is the best course of action for any one of you. I point out only that every major personal choice of necessity must, or at least should be, preceded by a personal assessment of available resources, opportunities, trade-offs and risk. In particular, I urge every young person to consider the full range of consequences before undertaking any major act of protest. And if you elect to proceed, I urge you to carry yourself always with dignity, that by your example you should serve as a light in this dark time. And that said, I wish to counsel every parent, every grandparent. I urge you in particular to take a stand so as not to let the full burden of responsibility befall our children. Arm yourself with information of the highest quality, think for yourself, and then exercise your full intellectual and moral capacity to help your nation and our planet survive." And with a bit of modification, I feel those words apply to the genocide that we're all seeing with our own eyes. Because I can't be specific about what anyone can do, all I can offer is some principles. I do believe safety in numbers is important. Conditional commitment is important. I cannot talk now about the Palestine Action protests without breaching my bail conditions. This campaign was partly about freedom of speech, about democratic freedoms, but I can't talk about it. I think that tells you something. I can talk about a previous Defend Our Juries campaign. It emerged after juries had been acquitting. People had taken action, both Palestine Action protesters. Finally, those juries were getting to hear some good information about the genocide, the history of it, the Nakba, the long history of displacement, of rape, of suffering. And when the juries got to hear about that, they got to hear why people were taking a sledgehammer to those weapons. They understood and they voted in favour of the activists, not guilty. But you can imagine how alarming that was to Elbit Systems, the arms dealers, and their puppets in government, as they so often are. They started to remove the defences from juries so that juries would no longer be able to acquit. No, you're not allowed to talk about the genocide. For climate activists, you cannot talk about climate change. We had 3 people sent to jail just for using the word climate change in court on their trial for taking action about climate breakdown. The judge removing the power from juries. There was a woman, Trudy Warner, who stood outside court with a sign. Said, "Juries, you have an absolute right to acquit a defendant on your conscience. This is an ancient principle of our legal system." She was arrested just for holding the sign with a law on it. And she was taken to the Old Bailey. And we got a group of us together and we said, well, if we let this go, if we let this go, what is left of our rights, our freedoms? And so we began with 20 of us holding the same sign that Trudy had held. And to begin with, the judge referred us to the Attorney General. We were interviewed by the police. we were told this was interfering with the course of justice, maybe this was life imprisonment. Then it's 40 people who do the same. Then by September it's 250 people who hold the same sign outside 50 courts around England and Wales. Then by December it's 500 people outside every court in England and Wales. And now we know the system cannot cope with it. They cannot prosecute, hundreds and hundreds of people for holding a sign without making themselves absurd. I can talk about that one. I can't talk about Parliament Square, but you get the safety in numbers. There comes a point when we become powerful because we're together. It's not one individual putting their head above the parapet. So that collective action is part of how I feel we can safely take action against the genocide. And there's just one more point. I'm going to talk just briefly about something that happened last Friday. This is the Friday after the attack on the synagogue in Manchester. 2 people are killed. There's a protest lined up in Parliament Square, and suddenly we have the Met Commissioner, Mark Rowley, we have Keir Starmer saying, out of respect for the Jewish mourning, you must cancel the peaceful protest with signs saying, I oppose genocide. And if you do not do that, you have no respect. You have no respect for the suffering, the Jewish community who has lost 2 people. And you can imagine how it felt to hear that, how it felt to very many people, because that's last Saturday night, it's another 60 people who were murdered in terror attacks in Gaza. Saturday, there's the arson attack on the mosque in Sussex. It barely makes the headlines. And imagine how people feel about that. And the action proceeds. But what we were witnessing in those communications was in many ways what marks the colonial imperialist mindset. It was divide and rule. It's trying to divide ordinary Jewish people from ordinary Palestinian people, from just ordinary people opposed to genocide, which included many Jews. There were many Jewish people in Parliament Square last Saturday, united by the horror of what we're witnessing. So that's the other principle I would like to commend, and I think it's a difficult thing, that our battle is not with ordinary Jewish people. It is not with the ordinary people of this country. It is with those interests that profit from bloodshed, that seek to divide people from each other. And there is a parallel between how Muslim communities must feel when we witness the Unite the Kingdom marches, with how Jewish people are maybe feeling after the attack on the synagogue. And hard as it might be, maybe this is something for the Tahakut Foundation and that principle of dialogue, that if we're going to break the cycle of violence, we need to be talking to people it's hard to talk to. And I'm very grateful for the invitation to be here and for this opportunity to talk to you. Thank you.